The last one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Start with only 4, then build it up to 8. Do this in the morning and before you go to bed. It's very effective, especially people who have got this problems, anxieties. This really calms you down. And this is the last breathing exercise is for meditation, calmness. So you breathe in through the nose and breathe out through the nose, all right? But take a deep breath. Okay. Slowly. Right. Say in the morning, for example, when you wake up in the morning, do 15 times. It takes about 3 minutes. Very calming exercise. It really helps your lungs as well. Just do like this and just breathe in. Do 15 times every day in the morning and in the evening. Now we do the tapping exercise. This tapping exercise, it actually what happens, it helps all your meridian zones in your body. It reactivates it. You see, and you say to yourself, I'm feeling much better now. You start with the karate chops here and use your fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. Now the other one. Now between your eyebrows here, now here, now under your eyes, here, between your chin here, on the collarbone, 4 fingers down, a little bit this way, and then be. Now here under your armpit, 4 fingers down. Your fingers, not here. Now the other hand, 4 fingers down. over your head in the middle here. Now we do Qigong exercise. Use this. Now here. Here. Now here, the other hand. Here. Thank you. Now we do some stretching exercise, okay? If you could stand up, please. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now do it the other way. Right, okay. Now the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now this way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The other way. All right. Now, neck exercise. Go this way slowly. Those people who have got dizziness, I would advise them to take it slowly or don't do it if you can't do it, you see. Then straight. Then the other way. All right. Straight. Now up. Down. Up. Down. Now go this way. Then that way. All right. Now, tilt your head this way. Those who have got problems with the neck, this really helps. Okay, now the other side. Very good. Right. Go this way. You should feel something here. All right. Now the other hand. Now those people who have got sciatica problem, you just go down. Try go down this way and that way. And then try and reach further down, right to the end if you are able to. You should feel a tension on your glute, your lower. Okay, now the other leg. Okay, right. Now do this way. Look at me. Okay. All right. Right. Now you do this sumsumia. Try and make sure that the whole body moves.
Now the other way. Right. Now, what do you say? Keep your feet apart. You should feel something here. Right. Now the other side. Right. Now go down. Hold the hands, yeah? Now, stand behind a chair and raise your calf and then drop down. Raise your calf, then drop down. 2. Look at you. Raise up and then down. Just drop down. This strengthens your leg. There is another way of doing it. If you can do it at home, just do this. You should see some tension here. This helps elderly people who are suffering from weak legs and glute. That's the main reason why you find we are so unsteady. So if you are unsteady, the best thing when you go home, do this kind of exercise. It is called tandem pose. You know what is tandem pose? Just see one leg in front of the other and stand. If you can't do it, just do like this. Or at home, you see, you take hold of something and walk like this. Walk. That's really helps. All right? Now, do this exercise now. As if you are sitting down. 2, 3, 4. Try as much as possible to go down if you are able to. If you are not able to, sorry, because you will fall down. All right? Hi. Sasa. Now turn this way. Now go down. Down, 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 down. Up. Now turn that way. Go down. You. Repeat. Turn the other way. And the last exercise is sit and stand. Sit down. If you are not able to, then hold your chair. But if you're able to do without that, just keep your hands here. Or stand up. Or just hold your chair, yeah, if you can. And then down. Up. Down. All right. If you feel breathless, out of breath, which is quite good actually. Okay. Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Imran, Surah number 3, verse number 180, وَلَا يَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ يَبْخَلُونَ بِمَا آتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ هُوَ خَيْرًا لَهُمْ بَلْ هُوَ شَرٌّ لَهُمْ سَيُطَوَّقُونَ مَا بَخِلُوا بِهِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ وَلِلَّهِ مِيرَاثُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ وَاللَّهُ بِمَا تَعْمَلُونَ خَبِيرٌ. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Now, Allah starts this verse with وَلَا يَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ يَبْخَلُونَ بِمَا آتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ هُوَ خَيْرًا لَهُمْ. He said, let not those people who are miserly, يَبْخَلُونَ بِمَا, for what Allah has given them out of His grace and bounty, but they are miserly. They should not think that it is khair for them, هُوَ خَيْرٌ لَهُمْ بَلْ هُوَ شَرٌّ لَهُمْ, but it is worse for them, those people who withhold. Now the key word here is yabkhalun. Yabkhalun is from the word bukhl. In Kiswahili we say bakhili, stinginess, miserliness, niggardliness, kanjus. You see, so and you are holding on to wealth even if there are opportunities for you to spend that wealth in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the verse here warns those people who are stingy that Allah has provided them, not to assume that it is good for them, but it is rather harms them. It harms them how? It harms them spiritually, and it harms them physically as well in this life and the akhirah as well. According to some commentators, this verse not only refers to those people who are withholding their wealth, but those people who are not passing their knowledge. They are bakhil in their knowledge. You will be asked on the day of Qiyamah, I've given you this knowledge, but why did you not pass to my creation? You see, so this is also applies to them. Knowledge is something which is very, very important. That is the first step that we should take in order to be able to understand our religion. Then Allah says, سَيُطَوَّقُونَ مَا بَخِلُوا بِهِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. سَيُطَوَّقُونَ. They will be encircled. I will explain to you what does that mean. By what they withheld on the day of judgment. The key word here is sayutawwaquna. Sayutawwaquna means their neck will be encircled. You see, Allah will place a collar around their neck, implying that they will feel choked, burdened by what they withheld in this world. Now, according to the hadith attributed to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that anyone that Allah has blessed with wealth and has not paid the zakah, which is due, will find that his wealth that he withheld is turned into a snake. And the snake will encircle around his neck, then will slowly start biting his mouth, starting from one lips to another lips. And the snake will say, Ana malikun, I am your wealth. And Ana maluka, Ana kanzuka, I am your capital gain. I am your treasure that you will held me. So this is going to happen on the Yawm al-Qiyamah. When the Prophet related this particular hadith, then he recited this particular verse which I have just quoted. And then Allah says, وَلِلَّهِ مِيرَاثُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. This verse reminds us that Allah is the ultimate owner and authority of everything, that all affairs are under His control. We do not own anything. It is only Allah who owns everything. Now, reflecting on this Allah's ownership, then we must realize that whatever has been given to us is a trust. It does not belong to us. Wallahu bima ta'amaluna khabir. Allah is well aware of what you do. Allah observes, Allah is aware of our actions and intentions, whether those people who do things secretly or openly, and even what our hearts conceal. Allah knows everything. So it is important that we lead our life with sincerity, with integrity, and with accountability. This ayah, therefore, serves us as a profound reminder of the consequences of miserliness and how important it is that we recognize that, strictly speaking, we own nothing in this world. Allah alone, and whatever we have, our family, our wealth, all is for the grace from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The ultimate ownership of everything that we possess belongs to Allah only. And if we are arrogant and swollen-headed, it would not take a second for Allah to snatch away that wealth from us. Our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, Al-bukhlu yudhillu musahibahu. Stinginess humiliates its companion. Wa yu'izzu mujaniyahu. And it honors the one who abandons stinginess. And he also says, Aqallun nasi rahatan al-bakhil. This is so important. Aqallun nasi. The least comfortable person among people, who is the one who is the least comfortable? The one who is a miser. Now, I've quoted this two types of bakhil. Those people who withhold their wealth, do not spend for the sake of Allah, and those who do not pass knowledge to other people. There is a third type of bakhil, stinginess. Can anyone tell me what it is? Very simple. It is very free. Good word, kind word to speak to the people is so free, but we are very stingy. Passing compliment to people, we withhold ourselves. He deserves compliments. You sit nicely with the people, but we out of our arrogance and pride, we do not actually treat people nicely. That is also part of the stinginess, bakhili. Speak nicely, because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was asked, he was asked, who in the eyes of Allah is the one who is loved most? He did not say anything else except two things. He said, the one who is useful to mankind and the one who makes people happy. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Jazakallah khair, Malim Murtaza Badali, for that beautiful recitation and tafsir of the Holy Quran, also conducting the exercise program. Jazakallah. Thank you, Hassan. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وفوضوا أمري إلى الله إن الله بصير بالعباد. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful, I entrust my affairs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Verily, He looks after His servants. Respected elders and my brothers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. A very warm welcome to every one of you. Pratham to sharon karunchu alana namthi je mahan dayaru ane dayar kanarche bayu ekbano ane nekbano. Again, to remind the people who still don't know my name, again, my name is Haidar Alidina, and I'm the chairman of Hujjat Seniors, and I'm here to serve you for the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So please talk to me if there are any issues that you may have. Hadith of Imam Ali alayhi salam, Allahumma salli ala محمد وآل محمد. Whoever is content will not be depressed. And Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salam said, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. A believer is one whose tongue does not hurt others. Alhamdulillah. Announcements for today, Wednesday, the 24th of September 2025. This is the final call that if you wish to attend the Miladun Nabi program on Sunday, 28th of September 2025 at Hereford, you are all invited, so please register your names. Any seniors requiring a lift from Stanmore to Hereford, please register your name at the desk. Anyone wishing to make a donation towards the Milad costs, please pay at the desk. We still have a few places left for our Ziyarah trip in October to Iraq. So anyone interested, please see me and I will send you the full details. Anyone wishing to sponsor a full or part niyaz for the Sawab of Marhumeens, please contact any committee member. Full niyaz for both ladies and gents cost £1,200. We also now have a facility of a card machine, and so you are requested to please donate generously at the desk. Anyone wishing to volunteer to join our seniors committee, please see me. And anyone wishing to visit our seniors who are not keeping well, please see Abbas Bhai Ismail. I also have some sad news from Dar es Salaam. Mehdi Bhai Hamza of Dar es Salaam passed away yesterday in Dar es Salaam. The burial arrangements are to be announced. He was the brother-in-law of our Anwar Bhai Danji. May I request everyone to recite Surah Al-Fatiha for his sawab and for all marhumin. Surah Al-Mubarak Al-Fatiha. Bismillah. Alhamdulillah. Without further ado, I'm very, very delighted to introduce our guest speaker for today, all the way from Birmingham. He is Mahmoud Sherali Bogaria. So Mahmoud Sherali Bogaria Bhai was born in Kampala. Just a short introduction about his profile. Mahmoud Bhai Sherali Bogaria was born in Kampala, Uganda. He came to the UK at the age of 12, following the 1972 Uganda exodus. After graduating from the London School of Economics and Political Science, he qualified as a chartered accountant with Arthur Anderson, one of the world's leading accountancy firms. He went on to serve as an audit partner at a medium-sized firm for over 10 years before setting up his own consultancy practice. Today, he combines his professional work as a management consultant and investor with his role as a geopolitical advisor to Far East hedge funds and sovereign wealth fund. Beyond his professional career, he enjoys sharing knowledge through public talks. He has spoken on topics such as disruptive technologies, threats, and opportunities, and Shia participation in local and national political processes. He also has a deep personal interest in the migration history of the Khoja community, tracing its journey from India to Africa, and later to Europe and North America. In 2024 and 2025, he delivered a series of talks on the subject to the seniors group in Birmingham. I'm delighted to welcome our speaker for today, Mahmoud Bhai, so he can enlighten us with a very important topic that would probably affect us. So I'll pass on the floor to Mahmoud Bhai. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Haider Bhai. Is that better? Okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. My elders, brothers and sisters watching online, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My deep gratitude to Haider Bhai for organizing this lecture. Thanks for that introduction. But thank you for that introduction in any case. Sure, thanks. Today's lecture is fairly timely, and I just want to go through the details as to what's happening in the world, and in particular in the UK, and how it affects our community. I'm going to be talking for about 50-55 minutes and leaving about 20-25 minutes left for questions and answers. The questions and answers, I think, will form a major part of this, because I'm going to go through solutions that we have and also discuss as to how it affects our community and what we can do to mitigate the problems that we have. The question that we have is, why are we addressing this issue at the moment? The topic looks at the impact of shifting global landscape in terms of immigration issues, the issues that affect our community. And the reason why we're actually addressing that now is that you must have all seen 2 Saturdays ago, over 110,000 racist thugs marched through London. Their primary aim was to demonstrate against Muslim influence in the UK. They were all anti-Islam and anti-immigrants in any case, but they identified Islam as their major protest point. They were then aided by a chap called Tommy Robinson, who was funded by Elon Musk, the world's richest man. And indeed, Elon Musk addressed the crowd. So the funding is there for them. They've got a tool in terms of anti-Muslim propaganda, and they're obviously marching on in numbers. If, in terms of questions answers, the questions I would prefer if you could leave it till the end. मैं बर्मिंघम में करूँ तो मैंने क्या कि हमने से ने तो याद नहीं रही तो 10-40 मिनट સુધી વાત કરીશ ને તો મેં કીધું તમે ફોનમાં લખી નાખો તમારા ક્વેશ્ચન તો કે અમારી પાસે ફોન નથી તો મેં કીધું પેન છે ને તો કે હા તો મેં કીધું તમારી આગળ જે બેઠો છે ને એની શર્ટ ઉપર લખી નાખો તો 2 જણાને યાદ રહેશે એમને યાદ રહેશે ને તમને યાદ રહેશે. So that is my advice in any case. I just want to remind ourselves with an ayat that is in the Quran, which is quite relevant, and we'll come back to the relevance of this ayat in terms of what we are doing. Allah says in Surah Al-Rad, Surah 13, verse 11, Allah does not change the condition of a people until they change what is in themselves. I repeat, Allah does not change the condition of a people until they change what is in themselves. So we'll come back to that particular ayat as to why it's relevant now, why it's always been relevant for our community, our Khoja community, because our community has always been migrating. If you look at our history, we were Luanas before, as you know, that came from southern Uzbekistan, northern Afghanistan, moved across to Sindh and then Gujarat. Then we obviously converted, and then we moved to Africa to Western Europe as well as North America. So that's our migration history. But this ayat will be relevant when we move ahead. If we look at why we're discussing this, if you look at what's going on in terms of the polling at the moment, this polling was taken on the 25th, between the 25th and 26th of August of this year. And it shows Reform polling at 28%, Labour trailing at 20%, Conservatives at 17, is of no significance. Liberal Democrats mostly hand in hand with Conservatives at 16. The Green Party is at 11. But the main thing to note there is Reform at 28. If you look at the Sunday Times article, now this article was taken on the 22nd of June. When I did this seminar in Birmingham on the 25th of June, their Reform's polling at that time was 33%. They've dropped slightly. And that's the reason why you've seen in the last few days Reform effectively bringing in ideas about people with right to remain in the UK, leave to remain. They want to introduce a renewal system, a visa renewal system where they renew every 5 years, and then also prohibit them from claiming benefits in the UK. And I think that'll obviously be extended to the access to the health service. But if you look at this particular article in the Sunday Times, where I've marked, it says Farage on course to be Prime Minister after the next election. And the next election is 2029. Many things can happen between now and 2029. But we need to effectively start planning ahead, because if these guys come in, then we have an issue. The issue that we have, and I'll summarize it, we're all amongst seniors here, and the language that our seniors understand at this stage in our life is ke bimari suche, bimari kevit na thai, nenu elaj suche. Yeah, so if we can understand that, we'll be able to understand what this lecture is about. The lecture effectively will be split into 5 parts, and we'll be looking at why in the first place we are here in the West. That's Europe as well as North America. The changes in the economic models that have taken place since we've arrived, the reason why we came here was different to what the reasons are we're staying here now. There's change in globalization and the rise of racist parties, populism as it's known, isolation and populism. The effect of Trump and its impact on transatlantic politics in Europe, North America and Canada, and also now in Japan as well, because Japan also has a very right-wing party that has won a lot of seats, and there's similar issues there. We'll be looking at the impact on our community, looking at the 3 generations, the first generation that came from Africa, the second generation is our children, and obviously our grandchildren being the 3rd generation. It affects them differently depending on what generation they are. And then finally we'll be looking at the solutions, elaj for want of a better word, kani dawa suche. And I want to spend some time discussing that and looking at what we must do, what we can do, and the longer we leave the decision making, the worse it will be. What we must do is the dawatam namra gori khawani, so we must do that. In terms of what we do, the timing of that depends on whether you have a minor surgery or major surgery, to use the analogy. So let's look at why we actually came to the West in the first instance. As you know, we had uncertainty after independence in Africa, and most of us started looking at coming to Western Europe and North America. And at the same time, years before, Western Europe required a lot of labor because after the war, their population in terms of male working population was decimated both in the UK and in Germany, to some extent in North America, and in Japan also. But Japan's population was high enough, so they were able to make use of their own people, and Japanese society is much more homogeneous. They don't mingle very well, so very few people were actually asked to go there. It's changed recently. But in Europe, Germany invited the Turkish population to come in as guest workers to help develop their industries and work in their industries. There was something called a Marshall Plan in 1948 after the war, which was an American instigated plan that enabled the factories to be rebuilt in Germany and in the UK. But the UK also had shortages of labor because quite a lot of their people were actually killed during the war, as were people from the Indian subcontinent, because the Indian subcontinent also provided labor for the military. So they brought in people from the West Indies to run the hospital nurses and porters and what have you, and bus drivers, and they recruited from parts of India and Pakistan, newly formed Pakistan at that time, to run their mills up in the north, Lancashire area and what have you. And that effectively brought in a lot of opportunities. The industries were actually developing, and it was sucking in labor from labor and entrepreneurs from Africa also. We were at the time feeling the effect of independence on shore, and I think we were looking at shores outside Africa, and obviously for education purposes also, a lot of our people came here. Things have since changed in terms of the globalization. As labor became more expensive, all the manufacturing jobs moved across to the Far East, to China, to Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, Singapore to some extent. And therefore, what used to be blue-collar labor, blue-collar meaning the workforce in the factory, those jobs disappeared. And when they were disappearing, they weren't able to retrain themselves into what was then left, which was high-tech jobs or finance or insurance. And therefore, that left a pool of dissatisfied labor in Europe as well as North America. And if you look at specifically in areas like Michigan, Detroit, etc., which was major car producing companies, all that was redundant because the car production had moved to Japan. And now obviously China became the major manufacturing hub for the world. Yeah, cheap labor, quite high levels of industrial know-how. So all the work had actually gone there. India, to some extent at that time, the early stages, wasn't interested in too much manufacturing. They relied on their software industry, which, as you know, is quite active in Bangalore, etc. And obviously they are funding, providing labor to quite a lot of software houses in the Silicon Valley. So with that pool of unemployed labor, this was ripe for people like Trump and Nigel Farage to say. And at the same time, as you know, during the financial crisis 2008, more recently the COVID crisis, the government spent a lot of money supporting industries in Western Europe and North America, and they had to cut down on the budget that went into education, health, and welfare. Now, if the growth rates were actually slower because the tiger economies in the Far East were picking up quite a lot of the economic growth, and the growth here in Europe was 1%, 1.5%. Germany was the engine of Europe, and now Germany is in reverse gear. It's got a major recession there. And what effectively happened was that pool of labor became dissatisfied, and it was right for people to pick up the story that, look, the most obvious people that are responsible for your lack of housing, your lack of education facilities, and your welfare are the immigrants, because for us, we are easily identified. We're not white. Being Muslims, our dress sense is different. Our women wear scarves. So we are more identified. And these people are looking at the whole section of the immigrant issue, looking at Muslims in the first instance. And they will, like the British policy was in India, is a type of divide and rule. They look at the Muslims first, and then they'll move on to Hindus and Sikhs, etc. So that gave rise to people like Nigel Farage and Trump, and they started looking at expelling. Trump is much further into this than Europe is, because he's in power. And they're looking at obviously picking up undocumented migrants in the US and basically throwing them out, even to countries where they don't come from. So if we then move on to where we are with these countries, if you look at the UK, we've obviously got a Reform Party and Nigel Farage effect. In the European scene and in North America and Australasia, there are similar situations there. If you look at Sweden, for instance, we'll go through Europe and see where the issues are. If you look at Sweden, Sweden has a coalition of parties. They have quite a significant right-wing racist party there in parliament. And they've recently, jointly with Denmark, have stopped giving asylum entertaining asylum applications to people coming in from Syria. Denmark is now repatriating Syrian refugees back to Syria because they think that Syria is now stable, and they are no longer entertaining the applications there. Netherlands, we have the largest party in parliament is a racist party. This guy who heads it was actually burning the Quran, wants to ban Islam as a religion in schools, and obviously restrict the availability of mosque premises and what have you. Now, they had recently had an issue with the coalition partners where they fell out over sanctions against Israel, because the right-wing party, the majority party, didn't want to put sanctions against Israel. And they therefore are going for another election, and I think in that election they will certainly form the largest party, so they will not need a coalition. And the largest party will then look at the immigration from Morocco. Netherlands also has immigrants from Indonesia, and what was the South American colonies that they had. So they are looking at actively repatriating and deporting immigrants from there. Same with Norway. Norway, Sweden, Denmark work in cahoots together. Norway also has a large racist party. And remember, Norway had a shooting from an anti-Islamic activist, which effectively affected a lot of Muslims there, and the trend there is that they want to move away from Norway. Belgium, to some extent, is less benign, but they have more benign, but Belgium also has issues of its own. Belgium is split between the Flemish population and the French population, so they've got divisions of their own. But there is a large influx of Africans from what was Belgian Congo. And there again, there's resentment, because what happens in the UK and in Germany in terms of the cake not growing very, very large. Therefore, if you look at what's available, and in particular because Trump wants NATO to produce or to actually spend up to now 5%, they're actually spending about 2% now. They've now earmarked for 2.5% of GDP, but their target is 5% of GDP. And if obviously if the cake isn't growing any bigger, something has to give. If defense expenditure is getting bigger, then obviously the cuts will be in welfare, education, and in healthcare. If you then move on to France, again, you've got a very large party there, Marine Le Pen's National Front, and they will be putting up. France obviously has had issues recently with their prime minister resigning, again, because they've got budgetary issues there, going back to what happened during COVID and prior to the financial crisis. These loans that they actually, the printing of the money is being reversed, and they therefore have to do major cuts. And those are not popular. So when the next election comes in, presidential as well as parliamentary, you can be sure that there will be major influences from the far-right party in that country. Austria, again, a very right-wing party. They don't particularly like foreigners anyway, and they've got more chances. And in fact, I think they've closed their borders anyway, not giving any asylum seekers entry into that country to claim asylum. Italy, again, a right-wing party, as Dr. Saria mentioned to you last week, they've stopped allowing our Muslims to actually hire halls for religious reasons, and that's gradually crawling into the local councils that run Italy. Germany, again, very racist party, AfD, has a majority. They didn't have a working majority, so they went into bed with Christian Democrats. They've got issues there now. And if there's an election there tomorrow, their polling is like Nigel Farage's. They will definitely come in. Now, these people, I don't know whether you remember, about 1 million Syrian refugees came into Germany when the Syrian civil unrest started, war started, and they want to repatriate all of those Syrian refugees back again. If you look at the actual data, Syrian refugees, the amount of unemployment in there is only marginally higher than the unemployment amongst the German population. So they're not really relying on benefits, and in fact are actually helping Germany's industry. Germany is one of those countries like Japan where they've got a negative birth rate. In other words, more people are dying than are being born. They do need immigration to fund or to actually man their industries. But they want people that are white and not brown like us. So that is where the danger is. Spain has a right-wing presence in parliament called the Vox. And they, at the moment, are again looking at the reduction in the number of houses available for the Spanish youngsters, because a lot of people buy houses, holiday homes in Spain, and obviously Airbnb is a big thing, and that reduces the amount of housing stock available for the youngsters. So they've actually pinched their propaganda based on the fact that it's the immigrants that are causing this, and obviously they're not, but it gives them a foothold in parliament. Poland and Hungary, I don't think anybody would want to go there in any case, but both of those have got right-wing parties. Hungary I'm surprised about because it was part of the Ottoman Empire, has had a lot of Muslim influence there, but there again, I mean, that's the only European country other than others, small ones, that actually voted against the recognition of Palestine as a sovereign state, and also has a very anti-Muslim agenda. If you look at North America, we all know what's happening in the United States. There are large populations in undocumented populations in Los Angeles, San Francisco. These are what they call sanctuary cities. And people are being picked up from there and without documentation being sent back to countries that they don't even come from. I mean, one of the ones that was actually being sent to Uganda, and he's never seen Uganda, he's never been to Africa. But they just come up with deals that they've done. Some of them have gone to Rwanda or have been sent to Rwanda, but generally they tend to effectively send them to countries in South America that are willing to accept them. Canada, I don't know how much you know about Canada, but there was, and there has been, quite a lot of incidences in Ontario where, for instance, one family was, a Muslim family was run down by a racist attacker. And there have been graffiti and such like daubed over one of our mosques in, not a Shia mosque, I think, in Scarborough in Toronto. And the issues in Quebec, Alberta again has a very large Somali migrant population. There are issues there. Again, access to education, access to grants for people to learn English are being restricted because the councils in Alberta are right-wing. Similarly with British Columbia, there are issues there, less so for our people just yet because British Columbia has a very large Sikh population. They came across to build the railways between Vancouver and Alberta, and have been there for many, many years, more than 100 years, and it's affecting them much more. But gradually, I think it'll affect our Muslim population there anyway. I mean, the majority, they are Ismailis, who are less visible in terms of the dress sense, but it will actually come. If we move on to Australasia, Australia has a significant Muslim population. The parties there have a foothold. They don't have much of a foothold in Parliament, but they are racist parties. They're primarily geared towards the native Aborigines, but as part and parcel, they also are anti-Muslim in their outlook. But it's less severe, as it's not as bad as in Europe and North America. So we'll come back to Australia later on. New Zealand, if you remember, the largest massacre of Muslims in a mosque in recent times was in New Zealand. But they had a very good prime minister there who since sadly resigned, who actually came across and nurtured close relationships with the Muslim population there. So New Zealand also has issues with their Maori population, but it's not as severe as what's happening in Europe. Now, how does it affect us? I mean, there are three generations here. We're citizens of the United Kingdom. We worked here. We've paid our taxes, we've paid our national insurance, and we're entitled to the health service at our age, the health service, and the pension benefits that we have. But it affects the generations in different ways. For our elderly, we are more concerned about the pensions, the availability of pensions for us, the access to national health service. As you know, the appointments, the time span for people getting appointments is getting longer and longer because they've been obviously cutting the budgets available in the National Health Service. For our kids, they're obviously experiencing workplace discrimination and they're worried about their own kids only because what's being taught at schools in the UK is becoming an issue. And I've spoken to a lot of people who've moved to the Middle East only because their kids need to be in a safe educational environment which is compatible with our Muslim values. So it's affecting our kids, and our grandkids are much more confident in their skin. But also, as I said, the education, exposure to the education is important. Now, in terms of what we need to do, many years ago, I had a colleague of mine, a guy called Praful Patel and Manzoor Moghal. Both of them were part of the Uganda Settlement Board. They were advising people on Ugandan properties and what have you. And I was at a conference with Praful Bhai, and he was saying to me, so the problem that our community has at that time, from that we recently arrived from Uganda, was કે તમે દૂધમાં અને દહીંમાં બે બાજુ પગ રાખો છો. You need to make a decision કે તમે કાં તો દૂધમાં છો કાં તમે દહીંમાં છો. You can't be in both, otherwise you will never settle. And that was very much the case. I remember in our own case, my father died a year before we left. My mom was quite adamant that Idi Amin will change his mind, we'll have to go back again. And she had her suitcase full, said, look, at any time we'll have to go back. So we were never settling. And that advice was right at the time. Prior to that advice, in Africa, આપણે બે બાજુ પગ રાખતા હતા because Africa was becoming so unstable that we felt that, okay, we either had kids studying here or we had money here or some properties in Europe and North America, so that at least કાંઈ થાય તો we've got આપણે પાસે કાંઈ આશરો હોય. The advice now is હવે આ જમાનામાં જમાનો એટલો ખરાબ છે કે આપણે દૂધમાં દહીંમાં બેમાં પગ રાખવાની જરૂર છે પાછું. We go back to the way we were in Africa, where we effectively need to look at environments outside the UK, where we need to consider whether we can settle there. આપણે પૈસા જો બારે હોય તો it will be advantageous for us, and we'll look at that carefully. Now, in terms of what we're going to be doing, remember, we go back to this particular verse, Allah helps those who help themselves. That's the shortened version of that. The options, we have three options that we have to consider. The first option that I think is a must, and this is where whether you like it or not, yeah, is where those of us who are of Indian origin, and most of us are, we need to look at applying for overseas citizens of India cards, what they call the OCI cards. The cards only cost £218, and I'll send Haider by a link on YouTube that talks you through how to apply for this. And also when the chairman of the India Federation was here in December, he gave me a number of a person in India who will assist in terms of guiding us as to how we can apply for the OCI card. What the OCI card does is that it gives you visa-free entry into India. It also enables you to buy property. You can't buy agricultural property, but you can buy property there. But the fact that it gives us visa-free access into India means that at least we can go there and park ourselves for a few months until we decide where we want to go. India isn't a place where the majority of us would actually want to set up our businesses or our lives again, because they've got their own issues, anti-Muslim issues. But at least apni પાસે આશરો છે, and it's an easy way. OCI cards only, as I said, £218, and it's worthwhile taking. Those of us who are from Uganda, the advice that I would give is that if you've got birth certificates with you, you might have renounced your Ugandan citizenship, but if you've got birth certificates with you, you can apply for Uganda passports. And that'll give you a second, and obviously if you have Uganda passport, you don't need visa to go into Uganda. And that is also advantageous because તમે ઝિયારત પડવા જાઓ કે હજ પડવા જાઓ, તો you'll obviously be on a different fare, also visa tier. હજમાં will be much cheaper, of course, but obviously ઝિયારતમાં તમને અહીંયા બધું આંગળીમાં છાપ નાખવાનું બધું જરૂર નહીં પડે. But to get Ugandan passports, this is what are the actual procedures. Duplicate birth certificates, if you don't have that, those cost $50, and that's the application fee. The processing fee is $50 to $100. Now, most of you know that I'm glad Moshin Bhai Qasim's here. Moshin's sister Mumtaz has a legal practice in Kampala. And they can facilitate this kind of work. You need a lawyer to expedite it for you people, and you want to make sure that the lawyer you know well, because otherwise it'll become a drain where $50 monks and $100 monks. Probably Mumtaz Qasim's office is there. It's a long-standing office. They make an issue with Moshin Bhai here anyway. In terms of passports, the passport application and the Ugandan ID application is $500. The processing fee is $500 to $1,000. But for that, at least you've got a passport that you can use to travel around, and also you can go back to Uganda. I'm not saying that you permanently want to go there, but at least so we've got somewhere to go. Remember, when in 1964, Zanzibar Majare revolution nothing happened in terms of planning. World Federation wasn't there at the time. World Federation came in 1976. But there wasn't any planning. There was nothing issue what we could fall back on. When Uganda happened in 1972, again, there wasn't any planning, pre-planning, incident. And as African countries became independent and became more assertive, we needed some kind of strategic contingency plan, but there wasn't anything there. Again, Somalia happened, nothing in terms of pre-planning. Yeah, people were scattered across. Our families, Ajamatma, so visas, so family and visa if you look at what happened in Uganda, the Ismaili community had a very good relationship with Pierre Trudeau's government in Canada, and they were able to go there. When you were score sheet, obviously if you're a Ismaili, you'd score quite highly. They had a far easier access to Canada than we had as Snashes. And that is what we are lacking in terms of planning. Tanzania is proposing an OCI type card which will enable you to go into Tanzania visa-free, buy property, and stay there. I don't know what the timeline is. It was talked about in December last year, but I don't know how quickly it's going to be introduced in Parliament for people to entertain that. Now, by the way, non-Ugandan people who are not born in Uganda can still apply for Uganda passport. The fee is $5,000, much more than Ugandans, and the processing fee is about $1,500. So one of those three things you have to have. My suggestion, well, if you get your OCI card, which is as cheapest, and then do either Uganda or Tanzania passports, at least you've got something that you can sleep at night. Is the next question. We looked at Uganda and Tanzania in terms of what's available there. Uganda and Tanzania. Tanzania, as you know, has found a lot of gas offshore. So the future looks bright for Tanzania. The future looks bright for Uganda too, because there's oil coming from Hoima. And I don't know, Moshin, whether they've got the pipeline built to Tanzania, it's being built or whatever, but the oil is actually flowing out in any case. So those economies will be doing well. The question is, can we settle there again? Now, at our age, we should be able to settle, but apni paase issues such as access to healthcare, which is not developed in Uganda. Tanzania, obviously, there is facilities there. I'm told in Mombasa, for instance, there is a hospital being built where there is a discounted treatment costs for our community. Our community is banaya che, but there's a 50% discount in Mombasa. I don't know what the timetable is when that hospital will be ready, but it is available, yeah, rather than nothing. One of the areas that is being considered, and quite a lot of our youngsters are moving to, is Oman. The Dar es Salaam Jamaat prepared a paper on Oman, and I can send a link to Haider Bhai for him to pass on to yourselves. And it basically goes through education facilities, upper religious access, and things like that, which are the things that we at our stage in life need to know, because we are much more orientated now in terms of what community facilities are available. So there's a paper that Oman effectively is far more cosmopolitan in terms of why Shia Sunni issues nathi, why Hindus, everybody's allowed to practice their own thing. It's not as glamorous as Dubai. You don't have huge malls and what have you, but it's an area that we can effectively live in. Dubai is a place where a lot of our kids are moving to, but Dubai, remember, religious-wise, is not the Dubai that we used to know before. why there are restrictions in terms of Ashura Majlis, Shame Gariba Majlis, and people are being watched as the Konkon Jaiche mosques. Less so with the Iranian mosque, but Abdi Khojani mosque, we are being watched. Yeah. In fact, there was a time when they were picking up Lebanese citizens who'd settled in Dubai and expelling them. They're Shias primarily, but that is what's happening there. Qatar is quite a nice destination, again very hot, but in terms of medicines, availability of medicines both in Oman and Dubai, it is available. What I'm saying is that entitlement on our health service isn't there anymore, or in fact there are huge cuts in our health service. Then we're saying that paisa pache, services to nathi multi, and Reform Party's policy is that they are going to introduce an insurance-based health service. So we might as well go to Oman and Dubai and Qatar and have our own health services there through an insurance scheme, rather than rely here. The only reason why we're here is obviously our access. The access to band thai jai or becomes restricted in terms of waiting list to wadi gaye hoy, and the waiting list will get worse because our 5% jo defense budget thase as years go by, something has to give. The welfare budget is one of the largest budgets, non-defense budgets, and that has to come down, as does the health budget. Yeah, Qatar is the advantage that the medical staff can move there quite well, quite quickly, because they score quite highly in terms of their ability to settle there. And Qatar also has a facility whereby parents of, say for instance, if your son's a doctor or dentist or whatever, and you settle there, their parents also get the same privileges in terms of housing and healthcare and what have you. So if your family is moving there, then obviously Dubai, Doha is a good place to go. And Doha is far more amenable to us Shias anyway. I think they are Salafis, but I think they are benign Salafis, not like Saudi Arabia. Thailand, I've missed on Malaysia. I'll come back to Malaysia in a bit. Thailand, I've looked at. North part of Thailand in Area Mai has very cheap labor in terms of care home facilities. Their care homes fees are lower. The actual availability of care home staff is there. They have a very good health insurance scheme there. And if there is a coordinated effort, so we can probably have a care home full of our snashies there, because individually it's difficult, but if we do as a group, it is more viable. And I'll come back to you as to what we're planning to do as a group. Yeah. Malaysia, which is not on that list, is interesting because Malaysia also has, at the moment, under the current Prime Minister, has a far more affinity to non-Sunni immigration. The prior governments, they were very much more closer to the Saudis, and there were incidences some years back where our Shia students who were holding Ashura programs, Ashura programs was broken up by the police on the instructions of the ministry there, because they were paid by the Saudis not to allow Shia majlises and obviously Moram programs. Now, this is what the suggestion is. Now, we need to do this at a higher level, at regional level, and more particularly the World Federation level. What we have done in Birmingham is, after my session there in June, a group of seniors got together and decided that, look, we need to really create a panel. I think you talked about this last week when Iqbal Bhai was here, a panel of experts that can advise on what we should be doing and how we can investigate which countries to go to. Now, what we have proposed, and we've actually done a terms of reference on this, a lot of work has actually happened in the few months since June. And we've touched base with Tamaro Ali Gokulche. He's lead of the 2050 vision, which is the World Federation vision. And we spoke to him, and we had the last session we had with him was on Monday. where we said that, look, this panel needs to effectively be set up with regional members. So say, for instance, European Council will put 2 members there, learned people. We're not wanting people who are like civil servants who are pen pushers. We actually want people who've got knowledge of what's going on in these countries. And the panel will be created by the regional influences in there. I'll of course be there. I'm not part of any region, but I thought it was my idea I should be there. But the important thing is this, our session share, this is going to be looked at, the 2050 vision is going to be looked at carefully in the January 2026 World Federation meeting in Dar es Salaam. And then it will be implemented. The idea is that if it's adopted by the regionals, then it will be implemented in the summer. But sometimes things don't happen very quickly. So if you're going to wait for the World Federation to coordinate its effort, if they don't find this is, because larger federations like Africa and India, it will be the like we have in Europe and in North America. We have an urgency that is taking place for us. It's the next 4 years. Any pela wakat kharab tha se, we don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. They've always been, in Birmingham, we are much more visible. The Muslim population is quite high. Birmingham will actually be the first minority, majority city in terms of Pakistanis and other Muslims being the majority in that particular city. So we are much more visible, and attacks our communities are obviously at risk there. Our initial problem was attacks from the Salafis against us. We've had that, but now I think people are finding that we are actually talking with the Salafis and saying, look, the threat is from external areas. So the World Federation, we're trying to actually get this passed through, and the terms of reference effectively looks at, we would identify in each region minimum of 2, maximum of 5 places. Say, for instance, Reunion Island, Makaitiu. If France were to give up its governance of Reunion, there'll be exodus there, because once independence happens, people may not feel that they've got, like it happened in the French Polynesia, where they were actually trying to change things and there was rioting. If that happened in Reunion, so ibadah kya jai? How do we have the facility to give 200 visas to our people in Dar es Salaam, for instance? And that's not been planned. Yeah. So if that region actually flares up, and things are moving quite quickly, if something flares up, we have so far been reactive. We need to be proactive. Yeah. So the idea effectively is to identify minimum of 2, maximum of 5 locations for each of the regions. So in the West, we will need to look at what's going on. Generally, for us, the reason why we come to the West was because of economic activity. Well, that's now all moving to the East. It's going to China, Malaysia, Indonesia. Those are the tiger economies, and we should be focusing on those economies as well as the Middle East. But Middle East is also very, very flammable. You can Doha tamne coach tamne jao olo jene bomb kari aiwo, which you thought that was safe from there, but things can actually react very quickly. I know for a fact that some American firms in Dubai have asked their staff to keep a bag ready with their medication, passports, everything ready. So they've at least got somewhere to escape with their documents. Now these are actually firms that are quite entrenched in Dubai, but they've got it ready because carry flare up Thai, we don't know, right? So 2050 vision is important, and the other thing that 2050 vision, Ajay here, what we're actually saying is called LTPCP, which is long-term planning and contingency panel. That is the name of the panel. Sounds like a medicine, but whatever it is medicine anyway, because that's what we understand. The whole thing is this: we would then have people on the panel who are fairly networked into the political system there, in their own regions, and at least we will know in advance. So we are alert much earlier than the thing coming onto the news. I remember in Idi Amin's time, and જ્યારે સપનું આવ્યો હતો કે Asian ને નીકળે, and there were murmurs amongst people. I mean, there was an inspector, CID no inspector, so Inspector Hussain, Moshin might have known about him, and he was talking about things happening, and then they killed him, if you remember. But there were murmurs earlier on, and I think if we're connected enough in those territories, we should be able to pick up things before they happen. And this panel's job is that. So I think, my message to you is this, that Ali Gokul is your resident here anyway. World Federation office is તમારા હેલફિલ્ડમાં છે. તો તમે દરરોજ ખકડાવો કે અમને કંઈ ખપે છે આ પેનલમાં, because that's the only way this is going to be speeded up. But એ speed થાય કે ના થાય, right? You need to do what I said, either get your OCI card ready or apply for Uganda or Tanzania when Tanzania is ready. Kenya has a similar situation whereby I think if you apply for, I don't think Kenya restricts dual passports, yeah? So if, say, for instance, your spouse has a Kenyan passport, then you should be able to get one. But Tanzania is important to get this OCI as soon as it's set up. Uganda certainly a must to do, but Indian OCI I think you should look at quite carefully. We finish with our final dua for our community. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanatan wa qina akhirati hasanatan wa qina azaban nar. Our Lord, give us good in this world and good in the hereafter, because this ajichiche, the longer we leave it, the worse it gets, because our immediate dawat tablets khabi khapse, whether you like it or not. But the level of surgery you're going to have, the longer you leave it, tamne bagu khapse without your assets. If you can start planning to move your assets now, at least tamne ashro hoy kya. Free flow of capital, nobody's going to restrict you to take your assets out. And also there is a reason, taxation is increasing here. Inheritance tax now is getting to the stage whereby most of you guys who have property in London will certainly hit over £1 million anyway, right? And if you leave your properties to your children and grandchildren, then that £1 million will be used. Any other assets effectively you'll be hitting at 40%. And God knows what they're going to be doing in November in the autumn statement. So it basically, you need to look at going abroad. For you to break away from inheritance tax entirely, you need to be out of the UK. The rules are much more clearer now for 10 years, complete break. And if you're not going to come back for your treatment because you've got insurance schemes elsewhere, then I think there's no reason for you to come back. But the global thing is કે જો તમે ભણવાનું ક્યાં રાખશો? બચ્ચાઓને ભણવાનું will be in Dubai, for instance. You've got universities here that have campuses in Dubai and in Doha. So there's no need for people to come to the UK to study anymore, and online studying is available there. So what I'm saying is the reasons why we came here in the first instance, those are fundamentally changing. The opportunities are no longer here. They're all in the Far East. You've got a giant China likely to take over America fairly soon. Especially America, I feel, is in reverse gear, because these tariffs are going to cause problems for them. They don't appreciate it because you've got a virtual prophet there who knows what he's doing. So if we go to countries where there is inter-trading with China, Malaysia, Indonesia, they're all now trading with themselves. Australia is also a good place to look at, because the majority of Australia exports are to China. So Australia, although it's an Anglo-Saxon economy, its economy is based on growth happening in the Far East, yeah? And therefore, whatever growth happens there will pull Australia with it. And આપણે community ઘણી છે બ્રિસ્બનમાં, મેલબર્નમાં, સિડનીમાં. And they've got a good health service too. Africa જેવી weather છે, so I think it's worthwhile looking at that. And they have more benign application availability of jobs also. So that's another source we can look at. Thank you for listening to me with that, and open to questions and answers, if I may.
Thank you. Thank you so much. For
Mahmoud Bhai.
Mahmoud Bhai. That was very, very, comprehensively covered. And I'm sure lots of us have lots of burning questions to ask. You have mentioned a very important fact that we need to do something about it. We can't just sit back and say things will work out. No, it won't happen. We have to get our thought process and all our parent bodies involved. The sooner the better, as you quite rightly said. And this panel has a very important task, apparently, and inshallah we hope. All right, we'll start with Mali Murtaza Bhai with his first question. Thank you.
Asad Muhammad Bhai, thank you very much. It was very enlightening. There were immigrants from India and other parts of the world. They used to come, and they're still coming here as skilled workers in the hope that after a few years, they'll be given permission to stay in this country and get their passport stamped, leave to remain in the United Kingdom for an indefinite period. I used to work at this department before. I remember that. And after some 5 years or so, they knew straight away that we were going to get a British passport. Nigel Farage, I don't know if you probably know,
Yes,
made a statement recently that if he comes into power, he's going to revoke leave to remain in the United Kingdom for indefinite. So this needs to be sort of thought about, especially those people who intend to come here. Number two, you advised that we should start thinking of taking OCI. Now, there are quite a few people who hold dual citizenship. What is the guarantee that those people who commit some kind of transgression against this government, where this government is not able to deport them if they have only British passport? But don't you think it becomes more easy and convenient, like the case of Shamima Begum? Shamima Begum, they were able to deport her, although all the legal channels were explored, you see. The fact that she had a right also, probably dual citizenship, to go to Bangladesh enabled this government to deport her, but becomes very difficult for those people who only hold British citizenship. That also may not be even guaranteed. So would you still advise people to take OCI or dual citizenship?
OCI, thanks for that question. OCI doesn't give you citizenship, it gives you access. It doesn't count as a dual citizenship, yeah? OCI card just gives you access to India visa-free, and you can stay there. It doesn't allow you to vote in India, so basically it's not a citizenship in terms of the proper term of citizenship, yeah? The issue with Shamima Begum was that she was actually even born here. She wasn't, so therefore she had a natural right herself. And she's not actually a citizen of Bangladesh. Her parents were, but their parents had actually come here under proper immigration status. They just made up this idea that she just wasn't allowed to come back. She's not gone to Bangladesh. She's still, I think, in northern Syria. And their attitude is that, look, we can decide who we should get rid of and not get rid of. Because she was under, her citizenship was revoked under the Terrorism Act, it was very difficult for people to appeal, but they're still appealing, yeah? I mean, the guy that actually revoked it was, would you believe, Sajid Javid, a famous, my member of parliament, yeah? So when you've got our own people doing that, તો પછી બાકીનું શું કરશે, right? હવે એ લોકોને તમને કાઢવું હશે તો they'll do that in any case. They'll find some reason or the other, yeah? But with Uganda passport, for instance, okay, chalo, if you are brought under the Terrorism Act, then obviously, if they તમે કાઢી નાખે, there must be a reason. આપણે ખોજાs very rarely come under that. The only person that is actually being charged under the broad terms is Fatima Rajwani. Who, as her charge is only, and there's a case, this I can't talk too much about it, her charge is only aggravated burglary, right? But for some reason, they've actually held her under the Terrorism Act in solitary isolation. So they can make things up. If they don't want you, they'll make things up. So at that stage, it doesn't matter. Things have gone too far ahead. At least you'll have somewhere to go to. Otherwise, apne case jana tame moklaવશો તમને to an unknown country where apne koi saga nathi, koi apna communities nathi, so we are completely stuck then. And remember, they're throwing you out, not your family. So your family will be here, and then whether they then want to follow is another story.
They have reported quite a few people.
Yes, yeah. A lot of people that were initially charged with the grooming cases in Rotherham have actually had their citizenship cancelled. So if they want to, they'll do that.
Assalamu alaikum. I know my name is been mentioned quite a lot. I am from Uganda, and we've grown up together in Kampala. So there is a personal affiliation as well. Just want to clarify a few things what Mahmood mentioned about Ugandan nationality. If you were born in Uganda and your parents are also born in Uganda or had Ugandan passport, you are classified as indigenous, which means the process is easier and cheaper. However, if you were born in Uganda and your parents were British or Indian nationality, then it is non-indigenous, where the fee is $5,000. I just want to clarify that when Mahmood mentioned that there are non-Ugandans can get dual nationality in Uganda. It is not the case. You have to be connected with Uganda to get a dual nationality. And secondly, when you mentioned Uganda and Tanzania, Kenya also has a similar condition as Uganda. So you are allowed dual nationality. So if you are from Kenya and if you don't have Kenyan passport, please apply and you will get it. You can apply either here or in Kenya. So just want to clarify.
Moshe, if one of your parents had a Ugandan passport, does that make you indigenous?
Yes,
yeah?
yes.
Okay.
So if either of the parents were Ugandan, it is classified as indigenous,
Okay.
which is much cheaper and is a very faster route. Thank you. If any other wants any questions on Ugandan nationality, I'm always here. Thank you.
Basale wants to go.
No, it's okay.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Saleh Jaksi. I'm from Tanzania. You mentioned about OCI. Things have changed. I'm holding OCI. Before you could buy any property or anything because of OCI card and you would get it. Now the rule is that if you have a property in India, you want to sell it, you've got to apply to the government. And you want to buy, you still have to apply to the government. A. B, those facilities which were being given before as on OCI card have been revoked. So OCI card is not a safe bet. Second thing, Tanzania does not allow dual citizenship.
OCA card is a separate thing. It doesn't give you
this has not come through. It has come through only in Zanzibar. So this diaspora card is still being debated. It's not there. And you cannot hold dual citizenship in Tanzania. See, so when you come, you better start. Tanzania's got an opportunity. Third thing, they passed a law as from October. If you own a property in Tanzania, as a foreigner, you are not allowed. You have to sell the property. Or if you have your parents' property in Tanzania and they pass away, you cannot inherit that property. You are allowed to sell and take your money out. So this is the law of Tanzania.
as it stands now, yeah?
It's from October.
Okay.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum
I remember in 2024, here in senior program, there was a guy, Azad by Hansraj, and he also mentioned, he was telling us to move to Pakistan, not for a business, but for a retirement. And he said we can get the properties around £100,000, and the medical is also excellent, and they are all Muslims there. Now, we have not mentioned Pakistan. Can you please elaborate?
I've purposely not mentioned Pakistan because I think for our people, if you're going into business, it's not a territory that we would want to trade in, because the people that went from Uganda to Pakistan weren't successful. In terms of retirement, upper retirement, what we need is we need certainty of power. That there are blackouts in Karachi, brownouts in Karachi. We need accessibility to healthcare. It had to be an insured scheme to be able to do that. And I'm not too sure how many people would want to settle in Pakistan. Majority of people that I've spoken to in Birmingham, for instance, wouldn't want to go there because some people have relations there and they're trying to come out rather than go in. So in terms of reverse migration, I don't think there is much flow into those territories. If people are into IT, for instance, Pakistan has a thriving IT sector, but those are specific pockets. Yeah. I remember હું કંપાલા ગયો તો 2023 માં આપણા સાથે એક family હતા હૈદરભાઈ અલીભાઈ મોટર્સ. I don't know whether you guys, yeah. તો હૈદરભાઈને મેં કીધું તમારી સેફટી શું છે? તો કે અમે છે ને તે બારે રાખ્યા છે પઠાણી કે ઘરે ને દુકાનમાં. તો મેં કીધું કે પઠાણ શું કરે? તો કે ધડાકા થાય તો પહેલાં ભાગી જઈએ કે આ તો ખાલી શો વાસે રાખ્યા છે. તો મેં કહ્યું તમારી સેફટી શું? કે કાંઈ નહીં. એ કે અમને મારવા આવવાના છે તો અમને મારી જ નાખશે, પણ આ તો ખાલી અમે શો રાખ્યા છે. હા, હાથીના દાંત બે હોય, ચાવવાના ને દેખાડવાના. આ કે આ ખાલી દેખાડવાના છે. આ ચાવાવાળા કોઈ તમને નહીં મળે. હવે તમે સવારના ઉઠીને આ ધમાલમાં ક્યાં વાપરશો? તમે તમારો ડાયાબિટીસ માપશો કે આ હેલ્થ, આ તમારો સિક્યુરિટીની યાદી કરશો? So that is not a territory that I would recommend. People may have different views, but it's not a territory that I would say that you would want to go. No, retirement again, you know, if you've got brownouts and blackouts there, then, you know, you don't need that excitement at that time of your life, do you? તમારી પાસે બધાને હાર્ટ પર ઓછા ઇશ્યુઝ હોય ને આ તમે ઓછી તારો અંધારું થઈ ગયો, એ ક્યાં ધમાલમાં તમને બેસવું છે? You are here in this country where you've got all the facilities, right? એમાંથી તમને જવું છે to a facility that is much more backward in terms of facilities available, infrastructure. You don't particularly want to go there. If you look at the Middle East, Australia, you know, in Tanzania, Uganda, Kenya, I think because we're used to those territories, we can get by. Karachi is very different ball game. Yeah? Now, I would say, Badui, I mean, a lot of people are here who've done businesses in Karachi and they've not been very successful. Maro, there's an example where somebody had actually set up an office in Karachi and they'd had a local Pakistani partner. ઓફિસ તમને સેટઅપ કરી નાખી, મને આ ફર્નિચર બધું જોયું છે તો બધું ફર્નિચર રાખ્યું હતું. અને પછી ટેલિફોન આપ્યો એને ને ઓલો ગયો પાછો લંડન આવ્યો તો આ ભાઈ ફર્નિચર બધું વેચી નાખ્યું ને ટેલિફોન ડાયરેક્ટ કરી નાખ્યું એના ઘરે. તો ઓલો બિચારો ફોન કરે અહીંયાથી, તો ઓલો કે હાલો, તો કે ઘરેમાં ઓલો ફોન ઉપાડે. વાં કરાચી પહોંચ્યો તો ઓલું ફર્નિચર વર્નિચર હાલી ગયું તો ઓફિસે નથી. હવે ઇટ્સ નોટ, this is not what we used to different type of business dealings in Europe, you know. Our genealogy manathi. But to come back to where we are in terms of migration, we are a migrant community. But what I'm just basically saying is a migration thase to khari apne, because as things get worse, we will need to reassess our position here. But we need to be, you know, planned and ready to migrate. We need to think ahead and say, look, as you issue Thai, to su karsu. You know, and some of us have got quite a lot of vested interest in the UK in terms of properties and and businesses, and we need to effectively start looking at whether you wind down or have something that runs itself and you can stay abroad, or basically wrap up here and move. No, this is, I mean, for instance, I mentioned Oman, yeah? One of the things that when I was lecturing in June, the night before, all of a sudden, Oman brought in income tax. At a higher level, at about $109,000, you start paying, I think 5% it was. But why, look at ala jewu chhe ne, Idi Amin jewu, look at ratna sapnu ave, look at em the ki ama chhe, so they'll do that. And once they introduce it, you've got no, there's no debate. You see, so as long as you're aware, but what I'm saying is, if you're retired, to tamne pachi corporation tax, the income tax, ma tamne matha kut nathi na. You're just interested in tamari dawa tamne time sir male chan tamaro electricity kam kare chan, we've got a community there. But Dubai, as I said, is a lot different to Dubai in the 80s.
Even India with the RSS influence now is not
In the India settlement ni wat nathi kartu, khali કહું છું કે તમને ક્યાં આશરો મળે જ્યાં ક્યાંય ના હોય તો at least તમે પાસે ઓલું હોય તો you've got something to fall back on. But settlement is not our especially in Gujarat, there are issues there. And remember, Modi's home territory is Gujarat. Yeah?
Yeah, Abbas, please.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalam.
Ambe આ બધું તમે કીધા, it is okay for temporary going. Now, what about permanent settlement? Like, now, like going to permanent places, like going to Australia, as you say, there the country is of immigrants. Immigrants are the majority. So, આજે ગયો કે 10 વર્ષ પહેલા ગયા કે 100 વર્ષ પહેલા તમે immigrant. So, that kind of places, New Zealand છે, or South America છે, આખું એમાં આપણે કોન્સન્ટ્રેટ ઓલ્સો કરીએ તો એ સેટલમેન્ટ આપણે જઈ શકીએ અને આપણે ખબર પડે કે આપણા છોકરાઓ ગ્રાન્ડ છોકરાઓ બધા આવે તો ત્યાં સેટલ કરીએ તો એટલીસ્ટ they will be able to stay longer than the countries like Africa, where majority are Africans. India, majority are political, but Arab we can't, anything can happen anytime. So, temporary change, but let us do also for where we can go permanently. Those are the countries.
Yeah, I agree in terms of you need to look at permanent settlements, and I think that advice should come from a central body, because we have an issue where we need a community, because without a community we don't have our programs of Muharram and Ramzan programs and what have you. So if there was a coordinated attempt to look at a particular site, and I think Australia is a good one, it is full of immigrants, I agree. But having said that, so is the United States. But immigrants, except for the Native Americans. And Australia in the same position. So you've got Aborigines there that are natives. But Australia, I think, is less so. I don't know whether you follow what's been happening about the Palestinian marches, but Australia had a march across Sydney Bridge of 200,000 people that marched across. Pro-Palestinian marches, and that effectively changed the government's mind to say, look, we will recognize Palestine because there is a ground root need to actually recognize. So you can change democratic countries into that, and obviously if you've got 2 lakh manasu non-Muslims or mixed badai, that are effectively looking at the insanity of the genocide, then you've got quite a lot of support for Muslims there anyway, yeah. But I would rather that, Australia is one of them. As you say, Arab countries are tentative. Kala jo gas pati gil kanu to bangai gaya badai, yeah. Ne loka bada પોતામાં જ વાપરે છે ને એ બધા પૈસા એ લોકો લંડનમાં ઇન્વેસ્ટ કરે છે એ લોકો પાસે વાં તો કઈ બહુ બાકી નથી રહ્યું. What I'm saying is, while the going is good, પછી 50 વર્ષ પછી આપણે બીજી ક્યાંય જશું. Our history is of migration, right? So whilst the going is good, we go to those for our safety and our religious beliefs as well. Permanently, there is nothing is permanent. Well, Kabarastan છે પણ માં લાઇટ ના ધડા નથી, લાઇટ ના ને ગેસ ના ધડા નથી, મેડિકલ તમને જરૂર નહીં પડે. હા. No, sure. South America, at the time, a lot of Lebanese went to Argentina, for instance. So Argentina, it's even more right-wing than Trump. Brazil is obviously a territory where there are a lot of Lebanese also there. There is one of Ashnashri family there, Gulam, I forget what his second, Karim Rojin or Gulam, right? I know him as that. He's settled there, and he's been settled there for some time. But they're few and far between. Brazil, because it's part of BRICS, Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, will have a growth much higher than the Western countries. In fact, you look at a growth rate is higher than the G7 countries, and they account for about 48% of the world's population in any case. Yeah. So what I'm saying is, at the end of the day, if growth is taking place there, then Brazil is something that we ought to look at. I don't know much more about Brazil than that, other than the fact it's part of BRICS. So I've shied away from South America. My cousin is a High Commissioner in Belize, which is still a British colony. But Belize crime rates are high. As I said, if you are retiring there, you don't need that excitement. You haven't
mentioned Iran or Iraq.
Iran it's a safe place for us. But the problem is sanctions will cause you problems in terms of the medicines that you've got available. So yeah, but what I'm saying is, at the end of at the time when Uganda happened, they had refused to entertain Ugandan refugees there by the time of the Shah, right? But because sanctions are causing havoc there, at the moment it's not. I'm looking at next 2 years. Change tight, then surely we'll look at. Iraq again is, when I was talking to somebody yesterday, Iraq school Sheikh Khoja Halawe in Najaf, I believe. But there they have to pay the government $20,000 a year to give them the license to operate a school, and the school is for free. Corruption okay, I mean, you're talking about corruption in Africa, but at that level, when you've got huge oil resources, nothing's being spent, so it's difficult for us to settle there. Because we're so used to a comfortable lifestyle that our internet it's different. Alaikum salam. I haven't seen you since 1979. Long time.
It's really a long time, but alhamdulillah. I think I wanted to make a comment that, and I'm very pleased to know that your cousin is in Belize. He's a High Commissioner. I have been in Belize and helping governments with projects on behalf of the Commonwealth Secretary, and I know the situation there. No, my point is that our mindset has now changed because there is ascendancy of the far right, and that is seen as a real problem. We are not seeing it in one country, we are seeing it in many, many countries. So we are seeing it all across. And so I think the issue then for us, is really along the lines of what you are doing. So we now, for example, have to set up kind of a system whereby we can know which are the countries, what are the ways, what is the pro and cons, what are the ways in which you can get in there, and what is the extent of our interaction, how long for, etc. So we need kind of a planning body. And that planning body should have information about various countries. I think when we heard about different countries being safe. So, you know, in Iran, for example, I just heard last that the Afghani community, which has taken huge number of refugees, they are trying to reduce it now. But clearly they can't handle it. And so there's question of capacity as well. So I think that information base has to be there. We discussed last time as to what should be the strategic planning, you know, for our future. So if our mindset is clear that, look, we are not necessarily going to rest on our laurels and say, okay, we are done. We don't have to do anything. We are done until we go to Kabristan. I think now what you have raised, what you have explained and sensitized people to is the fact that you already got a body in Birmingham to work on this. I think we need to have it both regional world, but we ought to have it at the local level as well. And we need to kind of think at an individual level to think about what are the ways in which we can protect ourselves. It's a kind of an insurance. So it's an insurance as to how we shall deal with our situation if things happen here. We know what happened in Bosnia. They were neighbors. They were getting along. Bosnia and Herzegovina. I mean, they were neighbors. They really got along. And what happened to our Muslims? So I think we need now to go forward and say, okay, what can we do now in terms of making this planning easier? So we discussed setting up a strategic think tank when Dr. Iqbal Saria was there. And now we need to think in terms of how do we liaise with Birmingham to see, okay, what have we done and what are the things we should do in Stanmore. So we can start thinking along those lines. And I think I'm very, very happy that you have really thought about this thing. Now we are no longer, going to just close our eyes and say, okay, we are done. We really need to go forward because this thing that you mentioned about the far right, it's a huge, huge increasing problem. And I think the more people realize that this is an increasing problem, not necessarily for ourselves, but our grandchildren and our children, then I think people start thinking of the need to do something.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Makul Bhai. You're absolutely right. You see, the thing is coordination will, let's see how far the 2050 vision takes this. If that is then taken and adopted in January of 2026 and then again implemented in the summer, if that slows down, then I think we need to do something quickly. It's important for us here in Europe and in particular the UK. Amachane, to actually summarize what we are saying is, Amachane amalam thya ne pate. Amalam chopli tamne solution ne male. Ama surgery ni jarur chhe. The level of surgery is how quickly we can decide and determine ke kya tame agar baklo reso as to where you want to do it and when you want to do it. So that is the important thing.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu.
My name is Oni Jafar. I'm from your part of the world. I was born in Jinja.
Oh, okay.
I was born in Jinja. So I have 2 points. Firstly, you mentioned about possible settlement in either Oman or Dubai. I think perhaps you glossed over, which our seniors should be aware of, is that to get medical costs that are very, very high in those countries, and for us seniors to get insurance is also extremely high out there. So that's the point I wanted to make. The second point I wanted to ask was, is it possible to hold 2 passports, like a Uganda passport and a British passport? Is that allowed?
For Uganda it is, for Tanzania it's not. And Moshin Bhai has just confirmed that for Kenya it is too. Yeah?
Thank you so much for your comments and questions. I'm sure you all, I think some of you might still have some burning questions to ask. I understand Mahmoud Bhai will be around for lunch, and later on, if time permits, then he would be more than happy to to entertain your questions, inshallah. Once again, I thank you so much, Mahmoud Bhai, for that such a comprehensive lecture. We need more time, apparently, to really cover this in more details, but inshallah, maybe in the future we would invite you again, once again. I would also like to thank Mohsin Bhai Qasim for having to recommend me, Mahmoud Bhai, to come along and deliver his lecture. It's such a crucial, very important indeed. We, together with the World Federation and the panel, really need to work quite quickly. Otherwise, you'll have to just keep your bags ready and at short notice, run. May I now request Naushad Bhai to come forward and recite Surah Yasin for us. Jazakallah. Thank you.
والمحمد وآل محمد صلوات. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم. تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون. لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون. إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون. وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون. وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم. إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين. واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون. قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون. قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين. قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم. قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون. وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون. وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون. أتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغن عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون. إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين. إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون. قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين. وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالأرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها مؤردين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا ونطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نؤمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صدق الله العلي العظيم. سورة المباركة الفاتحة.
Mu'minin are requested to Surah Fatiha for the Marhum Mehdi Bhai Hamza, the brother-in-law of Anwar Bhai Danj, who passed away in Dar es Salaam, and also for the Mayyat, which will, Salatul Mayyat will be after the Zuhrain Namaz. And you're also reminded that the Fajr Salat is weekend, Saturday, Sunday. It starts at 6 a.m. inshallah. Please rise for salutations and ziyarah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Assalamu alayka ya Aba Abdullah. Assalamu alayka ya Ibn Rasulullah. Assalamu alayka ya Ibn Amir al-Mu'minin wa Ibn Sayyid al-Wasin. Assalamu alayka ya Ibn Fatimah al-Zahra, Sayyidati Nisa'i al-Alamin. Assalamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Assalamu alayka ya Mawla ya Ibn Mawla. Assalamu alayka ya Gharib al-Ghurba. Assalamu alayka ya Sultan ya Abul Hasan Ali ibn Musa Raza. كن شفيعنا شفيع والدينا في يوم الجزاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا صاحب الزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان يا ابن زهر عليه السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم قل لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرزك توأم وتمته فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. صلوا على النبي.